And good evening from Philadelphia. Frank here with another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. And tonight we are on a Monday night with a very special guest. So let me bring on my co-host, Chan Hanna, to introduce him.
Hi, Frank. Thank you so much. We have a wonderful guest, very well-known guest on our show, Daymond Steer of the Conway Daily Sun. He was recognized as the 2006 New England Press Association's Weekly Journalist of the Year for the ability to write on a wide range of subjects. Stories submitted for that award included investigative pieces about town government, a piece on native brook trout, and Hurricane Katrina refugees in Milford, New Hampshire. Stories he's written has led to ethics reform and greater governmental transparency. He's part of the Conway Daily Sun's news team that won the 2018 General Excellence Award from the New Hampshire Press Association, won second place for Spot News Photo. Thank you for being on our show, Daymond. We look forward to talking to you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Daymond. And let's get right to it. You've gained a lot of notoriety in the UFO community for asking presidential candidates, at the very least, maybe some others as well that I'm not aware of, but asking presidential candidates about their opinions on the UFO topic. And where did that all begin? What gave you the idea to run that by them in the first place?
Well, the first time was in 2007 with Hillary Clinton. She came into my office at the Milford Cabinet, and we did an editorial board with her, and the editors and I sat around asking her questions, and that question just kind of popped in my head. I figured she'd been in the White House for a little while, and maybe she knew something, so I threw it at her and saw what happened.
And what was her response?
Then she said something to the effect of it was a very common freedom of information request, or it was requested of the Clinton Library or some such thing. And then just in the cycle of 2016, I had the opportunity to ask her again. I was curious if she remembered me, and she did. And she gave me a pretty enthusiastic response. And then I've been asking candidates for president in the U.S. Senate and Congress ever since.
Got it. So let's see. I'm trying to remember the 2016 run on the Republican side. Were you able to ask any of the Republican candidates up in New Hampshire about their feelings on the UFOs?
We did, but the paper wasn't really keen on my question at that point, so we didn't run their responses.
Okay, and this year, with the obviously Trump is running unopposed pretty well for all practical purposes on the Republican side, but you were inundated with lots of Democratic candidates up there this year. You've got the question in quite a few times, and how do you think How do you think it went this time around?
It went fine. They responded, and they were sincere, and they didn't really just laugh it off. That they gave substantive answers, and I think given the Nimitz incident, they really had to.
Yeah, I noticed that you've been tying that to Dave Fravor. Have you had the chance to interview him at all? Daymond. Hello?
The opportunity to interview.
Oh, that's the guy who he was involved in the incident somehow. Didn't he write a book or something like that?
He did write a book. He's a very close friend of Fravor, and he was letting us know that Fravor is not interested in interviewing with anybody anymore. So that might be the reason why you cannot actually, inquire that of him of that topic.
Now, did any of the responses from the candidates this year stand out for you? Because it seems like there was a real variety there.
There was. I thought Deval Patrick's was really interesting because he talked about being on the board of an airline and having pilots come up to him and saying there's things in the sky. I actually wasn't there. I didn't ask him myself. It was a weekend interview, and I was out of town. But my staff members asked on my behalf. So not my staff, but my colleagues asked on my behalf. So I thought his answer was really pretty surprising. Mayor Pete had a very interesting long answer, and I was happy with Senator Klobuchar because she said that she would look into it, and she did when I talked to her a second time. So there's that.
I saw that article. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what was the impetus to ask these candidates about the UFO topic? Is it a personal thing, or do you feel like it's important for government officials or would-be government officials to be involved in this topic?
Well, the first time I asked, I was probably being a little frivolous. The second time I asked Hillary, I'd been aware that John Podesta was basically begging people to ask, so I figured I better ask since I'd already asked her about it. Figured I already had an in. And then, this latest go around, I felt like a real calling to ask because of the Nimitz and David Fravor being from New Hampshire.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask you, there was an article that came out. It was in mainstream. This article was, I'm going to go ahead and reference, was on CBS News website, and it was written by Brandon Spector on January 14th of 2020, and it talks about the title of it says, Top Secret UFO Files Could Cause Grave Damage to U.S. National Security if released, the U.S. Navy said. Did you get a chance to actually review that article that was in mainstream media?
I read a lot of articles. I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, it just basically says the U.S. Navy feels that if they were to release any kind of classified files regarding a UFO, the UFO topic, that it would cause grave damage to U.S. National security. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know what they know, but all I know is, it was in the New York Times that there's stuff flying around, and I feel like, the commander-in-chief is responsible for the security of the United States, so I think it's a legitimate question, and I don't see a reason not to keep asking.
Now, you had mentioned a couple of people, Klobuchar, who just dropped out today, and also Deval Patrick, who really didn't get a whole lot of traction when he was trying for office, and Pete Buttigieg dropped out as well. Now, there is not too many remaining candidates. Now, Bernie Sanders did get the question, and I thought his answer was pretty interesting, whereas his wife is especially fascinated by all this. Now, in your experience dealing with politicians, do you ever get that kind of a response where the spouse will get in their ear and get them a little bit more motivated towards a particular issue?
Not that I can recall, but maybe. I don't know. I don't remember anything like that, but it's possible.
Okay. And now, did you guys get a shot at Joe Biden this year? I don't remember seeing any comments from him on this subject.
His wife came up, and I tried to get it to him through her, but no dice.
Okay. And how about Elizabeth Warren?
Actually, I'm hoping somebody out there in, internet land will come across Elizabeth Warren and ask her, because I wasn't able to get to her. Her answer would be really actually pretty good, because I think she was on a U.S. Senate committee that was briefed. I believe she's on Armed Services. Right. So my U.S. Senator, Jeanne Shaheen, is on Armed Services, and she was briefed. So I think there's a good chance that Elizabeth Warren was briefed and just nobody's bothered to ask her.
Now, I remember when Senator Shaheen was asked a while back, initially her response was that she didn't really care too much about the issue. She was much more concerned with earthly issues. It was the same sort of answer that Tulsi Gabbard gave when she was in there with y'all. And now we know that she has been briefed. Has she changed her position a little bit, or is she pretty much the same, or is she not talking, or what's up with her?
She gave me a different answer the last time I asked her, and I think she said that, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe she said that there are things that need more explanation. And that's where I'm at, too. I have no idea what these things are. Maybe it's just a big stunt. I have no idea. But I feel like this does deserve some explanation. I mean, New York Times for 2 years has these stories hanging out there that there's stuff flying around, and I just feel like we deserve a little bit more than that.
Got it.
Okay, well, what I wanted to ask you, Daymond, was after the president, after we have an elected president and we don't have to worry about dealing with an election, um, what are you going to do about the UFO topic? Are you going to continue pursuing it in an aggressive manner? At any point in time, you come across a politician or anybody you feel is of import and ask them about the UAP topic?
Well, I probably should explain like who I am and what I do. I'm a small town newspaper reporter in a 5-season resort community. I say 5 season because we got mud season, but we are a small newspaper in the mountains of New Hampshire. We're shopping is tax free, by the way, but we've got gorgeous scenery and lakes and mountains and the whole nine. But this isn't something that I do all the time. I mean, I'm more focused on municipal stuff and court stuff and police stuff and fire stuff. I guess come, summer, we'll have the U.S. Senate primaries in November. We'll have U.S. Senate, elections in November and Congress people running this year. So, we'll take a crack at asking them. And see what they do. So it'll come up that way, but I'm not just hunting UFOs all the time.
Okay, I do have another question, and that is, and let me go ahead and preface it with this. President Trump has admitted that he's been briefed on the UFO topic, and wanted to ask you, let's just pretend that President Trump is in front of you, and you're able to ask him a few questions on the UAP topic, unhindered. What would you ask him?
I would really just ask him to clarify his previous statements because they were sort of difficult to understand. And I think, the president's a busy guy. Maybe he was caught off guard. I don't know. But, maybe, if he's reelected, that would take some pressure off. And, the impeachment's behind him. And, maybe just taking a crack at, hey, what you said is kind of confusing. Could you clarify it? And maybe he would, that'd be great. I think Tucker Carlson should take another run at him if he's reelected.
Yeah, I've noticed that Tucker Carlson has really covered this topic pretty comprehensively. In fact, a lot of people who are deeply involved, or rather in and out of the UFO community, have been very impressed with his willingness and not having any fear to cover this topic as thoroughly as he has. So I'm pretty impressed about that.
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff.
So now that the primary is over, is that about it? Does New Hampshire get a lot of attention from the nominees when they're actually are going down towards the general election?
I don't know. Maybe sometimes. We're a swing state, that's for sure. And my congressional district, swings, hard between Republican and Democrat. It goes really for the last while. It's gone, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. So, it is a swing district. I could imagine that maybe they'd want to come here, but I'm way up in the mountains. So they'd be more likely to stay well south of me.
Now, is you said that one of your Senate seats is up for grabs this fall. Is that Senator Shaheen's seat, or is it the other seat?
I believe it's Shaheen, yeah.
Okay.
When we had an opportunity to interview Tom Rogan, the journalist, the reporter, he was talking to us extensively about the UFO topic, and he wrote an interesting article. I think it was for the Washington Examiner, and it was in December of last year. And he wanted to go ahead and postulate on what one of the real issues were regarding the UAP topic and the U.S. government. And he hypothesized that the first issue is the nuclear issue, and that if there's a UAP activity out there, and that naturally the government would be concerned regarding any activity near their nuclear arsenals and things of the like. Do you have any input on that or opinion regarding that?
No, not really. No.
Now, as far as the reaction that you've gotten from colleagues as far as your UFO question, it seems like you mentioned you're getting some support from other staffers at the Sun, but are you getting any kind of feedback from folks at with other news organizations?
Yeah, I guess so. Vice interviewed me a while back. We got picked. My editor, who's a big fan of New York Magazine, was pretty astonished and pleased that we were on some sort of grid thing that they do, and we were on like sort of the edge of the good, what's considered good. So she really liked that. So I mean, we get picked up and quoted, all over the place.
Right. Yeah, the different interviews that you did when those questions come out, it got a lot of circulation. It got a lot of play, not just here in the States, but around the world. Now,
Sure.
do you think that this kind of attention towards Conway is going to help, gin up some business for you as far as getting some more tourists in there?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we're a beautiful place, and we've got lots of hotels and amenities and scenic views and attractions and all sorts of stuff. So people should check us out.
Got it. And Chant, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Daymond, what if the UAP topic actually ends up being covered more than ever by mainstream media? Are you going to plan on jumping into that topic and covering it more in the future? Or is this just something that you're doing periodically, sort of every now and then?
This is kind of an election thing, but if somehow this involves Conway, New Hampshire, or the northern half of Carroll County, then I guess we'll be on it.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you one last question, and that is, can you venture a guess, even if you're just going to postulate, hypothesize anything on this topic, do you have any idea from your perspective whether the UAPs could be not from this planet, or they could be one of ours, so to speak, say military-industrial complex related?
I have no clue. I mean, I don't have any answers at all. I just have questions. I just feel like, it's not even that I expect the candidate to, cough up the X-Files or something like that. It's really just kind of a personality question, a personality test, see how they react to it. And readers can make what they will of their answers.
Yeah.
And I've got one last question for you, Daymond. Really quick, if there was 2 or 3 or as many as you care to name, people that you haven't asked this question to, who would you like to ask it to? Who would you like the opportunity to run this by them?
Well, obviously, I'd love to ask President Trump. And I'd really like to see the question posed to Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren, because I wasn't able to do it. So hopefully somebody will follow up. Warren might be not long for this world in terms of her candidacy after Tuesday. So there isn't really much time to ask her, but she'll be a senator for a while, I guess. So, someone from Massachusetts might want to ask her and see what happens. And Joe Biden, he says a lot of things, and I'll leave it like that.
Right. Yeah.
One other,
which I'm sure.
Go ahead, Chad. Go ahead. I do have one more question then.
I just wanted to make a comment to Daymond, and that is, although I understand how it might be sort of a personality test, so to speak, or something along those lines, when you ask a question like that, that seems rather lofty or whatever. But folks in the UFO community take it very, very seriously. This is a topic we cover 24/7. And when you might ask it in a very serious or lighthearted way, regardless of the manner or the reason or agenda that you might have why you ask the question regarding the UAP topic of candidates or whomever, we take it very seriously, and we are looking forward to any and all answers from anybody you ask the questions of. So thank you for asking them.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's not, I wasn't trying to make it a joke. I feel like it really is
Oh
a
no, we
serious
didn't
issue,
take it that way.
especially now that we had David Faber's really compelling story, and we have the people from the Nimitz written up in Popular Mechanics or Princeton. Anyway, we have multiple witnesses. We have the Navy saying a lot of things, and we have the Pentagon saying some stuff. We have Luis Elizondo, we have Tom DeLong, we have all these people, and Podesta and Hillary. We have all these people saying that there's something there, and I'm just curious as all heck to find out what's going on.
Yeah, we didn't think you made light of the topic in a negative manner at all. We're just thrilled you're doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, and I absolutely appreciate that sort of the outside the box nature of it, like just sort of like the Rorschach test, and it is a different kind of question to ask a lot of these candidates, and it is interesting. The variety of the responses was very, very interesting. So
I really want to. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
I just want to really encourage other people to do it. Joe Rogan and I are and I think the Breakfast Club too, are like the only ones who are really chasing it really that hard, or to ask candidates. Obviously the New York Times did great stuff in Politico, but it's not being asked, and I frankly don't want to be alone with it. So the more people asking, the better.
Agreed.
Definitely. And one final question regarding right after the New York Times story came out, during the press briefing at the White House, the press secretary at the time, Ms. Huckabee Sanders, was asked about the story, and she said that she'd get back to them, get back to the press corps on that. And then there was one shouted question at President Trump as he was heading off to the holidays, and then they kind of let it go. I really thought for sure that they were going to follow up, just if nothing else, on principle, to get some kind of an answer, and they kind of let it go. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
It's sad. I guess as Trump would say, it's sad. It's just a huge disappointment. And, credit to George Stephanopoulos and Tucker Carlson for following up eventually. And one question I would have for both of them is, did the president have any idea that question was coming? I kind of think not. I think but I don't know. I've never interviewed a sitting president before. So, maybe they have to run every question, by his staff, or I don't know if he expected it or not, but I'd imagine that would be a tough one to be kind of sprung with. I think if you're going to ask the president, I would give him 2 weeks notice to research it. If I was in their position, obviously I'm not important enough to talk to the president, but it just seems like one of those things that a president would need some time to prepare for.
Are you willing to gander a guess whether President George Bush and Barack Obama may have likely been briefed on the UFO topic? Do you think that that's possible or reasonable?
I mean, anything's possible. I have no idea. I mean, really, I'm just a guy who lives in the woods. I deal with fires and police and county commissioners and stuff like that. So I have no idea what they do in Washington.
Yep. Well, Daymond, I sure do appreciate you blocking out the time and coming on with us after covering a municipal budget meeting. Is that about right?
It was a candidates night where they went into depth about how much unreserved fund balance the town of Ospey, New Hampshire actually has.
Got it. Okay. And how many column inches are you going to get out of that for Wednesday's Conway Daily Sun?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the editor likes things about 1,000 words, so we could probably do that. Or I'd hope to do less, just because it's pretty dry.
It was riveting, right?
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, well, we got to support our local journalists, so that's important.
And we appreciate you very much. And I know I've already said this, but I know it's probably obvious to you. We have an acute interest. That we're very passionate about the UFO topic. And we're a little rabid about it. But anyway, what I was going to say is I really want to just give you my heartfelt thank you, and just know that anytime you let the acronym UFO slip out of your mouth and you're talking to a public figure, we're thrilled. So thank you for covering that topic.
Yep.
I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Daymond. You have a good night. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Okay, and that was Daymond Steer, nice enough to join us. Chant left too.
Are they supposed to leave?
Yeah.
Okay,
Chant, are you there? Okay, yeah, we're still rolling here. You left the other call. Okay, so
I didn't mean to. Sorry.
Okay.
That was a great call, by the way. I really enjoyed it. And
it was.
it was. I just thought it was interesting that this person who has, regular beat, he covers current news in the area that he resides in.
Yep. That is local reporting no matter where you go. Municipal meetings and budgets and candidate nights and police logs and all that fun stuff.
And I've read some of his articles. He's a very good writer, and you can tell that he's very passionate about the area he lives in. So he's just a very good guy. And, I know you know this, but I am very thankful to that person for having enough interest to cover this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more of that. We sure do appreciate Daymond Steer's help. And then finally tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about a poll that I was able to conduct over at my Facebook group. And basically, the question went like this. I tried to word this as sort of nonpartisan as possible. But would you vote for a presidential candidate you would otherwise oppose if they were firmly in favor of full disclosure on UFOs? And the results were kind of interesting, Chant. Now we actually disagreed on this because you said that you would. I noticed you were in the yes column, and me, I was in the no column. But most of the folks now, this is, I think, an interesting enough threshold, interested enough to join a Facebook group related to UFOs. And we had 263 total respondents, which was a pretty decent number. That's certainly enough to get a good feel for, what the typical UFO person might think. And it went not quite 3-1 saying no, that they would not. And of course, the implication in the question is basically, if it was a presidential candidate you already supported and they were in favor of UFOs, that'd be just icing on the cake. But would you actually take the step to vote for somebody that you wouldn't vote for otherwise if they supported full disclosure on UFOs? So I thought that was pretty interesting. Most of the people came in. It came in a little higher. I was figuring it was like maybe 2 out of 3 to 3 out of 4 is the range I was kind of expecting. It came up on the high end of that range. And Chant, you voted yes, as I recall. So why do we disagree on this? We disagree about so little. Why do we disagree about this?
I want to cheat, though. I want to cheat and ask you a question. Before I cheat and ask you that question, I want to make a comment, and that is on that poll. I think you should have put a third option, and that is undecided. But anyway,
no, make up your mind, damn it.
No,
make up your mind.
I know you don't like when people act lazy and they don't make a decision. But I still wanted to cheat and ask you a question. Yeah. Why did you say no? I want to know that. Frank.
Because I'm not big on supporting really any of the mainstream presidential candidates. So I'm already generally disinclined to vote for any of them. I usually just actually, Chan, how would you like to be president? I might vote for you in the next presidential election. I don't know. You're at least 35, right? You're constitutionally qualified. You're at least 35, aren't you?
Right.
Okay.
I'm still a spring chicken. That's
just checking.
No, but I think what you should do is ask that question again, as if you're going to pose the poll right now. So go ahead and read the question of the poll that you
would vote for a presidential candidate who would otherwise oppose. Or let me start from the top here. Obviously, I'm not a professional newsreader. Would you vote for a presidential candidate you would otherwise oppose if they were firmly in favor of full disclosure on UFOs?
Okay, I have something embarrassing to admit. to
Embarrassing to you, to who? You or me?
to me.
Okay.
For cheap thrills, I would vote for that presidential candidate just so I could find out more about the UFO topic. If I could somehow secretly be assured or publicly be assured that they're really going to cover it,
Really
because
gonna do it.
I'm that passionate about the topic. However, if it's an individual that is going to be detrimental to the United States of America, and I know that can be taken, however, because everybody thinks the person that they don't like that's running for
very, very
government is
subjective.
detrimental.
They're all
Right.
ruining the country.
Yeah, they're all ruinous. But
So somebody thinks so. Somebody thinks that
right.
it'll be the end of the country.
Yeah. In fact, this is how I feel about answering that question. No matter how I answer it, nobody's going to be satisfied. So
there you go.
None of our listeners will be happy
So,
because you and I both know.
This might also be some evidence for different presidential candidates say, yeah, this is UFO stuff. I'll just leave it alone because there's no support in it. You know, there's no upside. You know, politicians care about what's in it for them, and there's really nothing in it for them.
I think if there was a presidential candidate that really believed that the UFO community was in the millions, and that they were voters, or they could entice them to vote, even if they were not voters, active ones.
Right.
They would absolutely not sit still or idle. They would jump on it and say, hey, I'm going to disclose stuff about the UFO topic when I get voted in as your whatever, fill in the blank, that I think that a candidate would do that and use that to their advantage. I absolutely think they would.
Well, yeah, I think they would, but I think they also know that the UFO community is a real niche. You know,
right.
there aren't millions out there. You know,
right.
there might be some people with a passing interest. Hundreds of thousands might have read that New York Times story.
I disagree with you on that. And this is my theory. I cannot prove it. It's just a hypothesis I have, and that is, I think there's something like 7.7 billion people on this planet right now. You've heard me talk this way before.
Yes.
I said this to you before. You just imagine out of the 7.7 billion, there's, I think, 193 or under 200 countries on the planet. Now, think about that. There's countries that do not have, citizens of those countries that do not have the privilege of being able to speak freely, just speak their minds. So if that's the case, how would we ever really know how many rabid or passionate UFO fans there are out there? Folks who really do look up in the sky and they're following this topic on their own. We just don't know.
Yeah, but there aren't that many of them, at least here in the States. And even in obviously Facebook, YouTube, places like that, the website that I run, I see the demographics in the different countries that the membership belong to. It's obviously it's overwhelmingly English-speaking countries, the U.S., Canada, Australia, the UK.
Well, and I do have an answer to that too. I'm not saying the answer, but I do have an answer to what you're talking about, a response. And that is, I still disagree with you. And the reason why I do is so I'll give you an example. I manage 200,000 members in 12.5 groups and pages on Facebook, or I have anyway. And I have seen in those public groups folks who will actually follow the public group postings, but not join the groups. How do I know that? Because if you're following a public group and you click like on it or whatever emoji icon on a post, you actually can do that and not be a member. So there's people who actually follow this topic on the peripheral edge, on the razor's edge of the UFO community. And those people are not being counted. And I think that they're probably in the hundreds of thousands. And the reason why is they don't want anyone to know they're involved in this topic, but they do actually follow it.
And that, and I don't doubt that on the one hand. On the other hand, how deeply into it are they?
And we
we
don't
generally
know.
associate with folks who are way into it, not and I mean not just folks who appear on this show, but we've got our friends who
Well,
they don't want to do a
right.
podcast or appear on a podcast, but they're into it, and it's it's a different threshold. It's a higher level of interest. They put more time into it for one in one way or another.
Okay, well let me just give you some input on that. And that is, if you are a citizen of a country and you're concerned about the nuclear issue regarding the UAP topic. I notice I changed to UAP because of nomenclature of the military-industrial complex. That's the term they use. I can never say that stupid word, by the way. Anyway,
Nomenclature?
yes, that. Thank you. Anyway, if you're concerned about the nuclear issue and the UAP topic, that's being pretty serious. You don't have to. The way I look at it is, if you follow the UFO/UAP topic, you don't have to be serious. I'm sorry, you don't have to be considered serious just because you don't cover it 24/7 in your mind or in media. As long as you're concerned to the level you are, that's being serious to me about the UAP topic.
Right. And we've seen that people who are pretty serious. And, obviously, there's some names I recognize, some names that our fans would recognize who did take part in the poll. And, they were a minority, but you did. There's some other people who have been on the show that took part in the poll because they're members of the group. And, they put their 2 cents in, but their votes count the same as everybody else. I think it kind of evens it out. And I think UFO voters are discerning enough that they're not one-issue voters. You know what I mean? They look at the big picture, the whole thing, and disclosure is going to happen when it's going to happen. And
Right.
I think that's about where they're at with that. And I was a little surprised it pushed 75%. Like I said, I was figuring somewhere between 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. So it was definitely on the high end. But I'm not surprised that most people said no. I'm not.
Right. So I think that there's a group out there called People Say, and I think they did
Yes.
some kind of UFO, what was it, a poll. And I'm looking it up right now to see if I can
it was
find
both
that.
in the U.S. and in the U.K. they did.
Right. And they actually had a fascinating poll that they covered recently. It was just last month.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting seeing the answers regarding that. And it was also fascinated that there was even an organization that cared enough to ask thousands of people.
And
about the
there have been
UFO
a lot of polls. I think Gallup did another one recently. And generally speaking, there's always been a fair percentage that think, there's more to UFOs that the government's not telling us. And, we're literally, like with the question you asked Daymond, we're literally seeing the truth of that. They're pretty well, the Pentagon's pretty well confirming that
Right.
there's material about UFOs they're not going to
So
release.
there was a Gallup poll.
Yeah,
You're right,
there
was
have been a number of
Gallup
them
poll, and
over a period of years. And usually,
right. Well, no, I know.
It's a pretty good number of folks who
But
think
the
that there's something to this.
Yes, so there was a recent Gallup poll. I think it was 2019. It was spring of last year, and they found that 2/3 of Americans believe the government knows more about the subject than it has conveyed, regarding the UFO topic. And I think that was another one in 1996, and 71% believe that, and 19% said no. So yeah, the Gallup polls, they try and cover it as much as possible. And then I also noticed that there was a British astronaut, the first one to have mentioned the ET topic, and it just happened this year. I think it was Harmon was her name. And she was Britain's first astronaut, and she said something to the effect of, she believed that it's possible that extraterrestrials live amongst us. And so I thought that was interesting that as soon as 2020 happened, that story came out.
We'll have to get her on the show and ask her what she meant about that.
I already asked her.
Oh, okay. What'd she tell you?
Her name is, I actually contacted her PR folks, and her name is Helen Sharman, and she was not only the first female astronaut, she was the first British astronaut.
Okay.
it's just fascinating that she actually bothered to even, broach that topic at all.
And what did they say? What was the response?
Oh, well, I just think the public was really surprised that she said that aliens definitely exist, and that they could be living amongst us on Earth, and it was covered by mainstream media.
Right. But what was her response to the part about they could be living on Earth amongst us? That was
well, she said, okay, so what she did was she said that there are so many billions of stars out there in the universe that there must be all sorts of different forms of life. And then she went on to say, will they be like you and me, made up of carbon and nitrogen? Maybe not. And then a theory that she postulated, she said it's possible they're right here. They're here right now. We simply can't see them. And she was the first of 7 Britons to enter space. And it just goes on to say here in that mainstream news article that she spent 8 days as a researcher on the space mission when she was 27, making her one of the youngest people ever to enter orbit. But she did discuss her frustration with observers, and talking about how frustrated she was being the first British woman in space, but she's saying, I was the first British person. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting to add that in.
Got it. All right. So, we got this one done in a reasonable amount of time after doing a lengthy show yesterday. Do you have anything else before we wrap up?
Well, I did want to say that I thought it was interesting because last year you told me repeatedly, you said as soon as 2020 happens, the UFO topic is going to be covered in mainstream media, and you just felt like it was just going to be covered all around. And I thought, no, I didn't really see that happening. I mean, I had my hopes high, but I was trying to be realistic too, because, I love this topic. I think about it 24/7. And I didn't want to be unreasonably passionate about it because I didn't want to be disappointed. And as soon as 2020 hit, we had Helen Sharman talk about this topic. We had that interesting article that hit the mainstream media talking about the U.S. Navy saying that UFOs, if they were to reveal anything about the UFO topic, any classified files, that it could create grave damage to the U.S., to the government, to America. So I just thought it was really interesting. And it's not just those two topics either. There's been a ton of stuff that has come out this year.
Yeah, it's been a good year so far. February was not quite as busy as I was hopeful of, but hopefully we will see some more news come down the pike. And when it does, we'll try to get all over it and get on top of it and have some good shows as a result. If not, then we'll have to be more creative.
February just slipped away. Like this is just a fresh new month. Like literally the first 2 months of this year, we've had just one UFO story after the other in mainstream media. Although Americans are still, or rather people in general, are still skeptical of the UFO topic, they're actually reading about it in mainstream news. And one mainstream media outlet that does cover it, whether you like them or not, is Fox News. They do cover it on a regular basis. So it's always nice to be able to rely on some mainstream media to cover it.
They do, and they've been quiet lately. So okay, and we haven't been quiet lately, but at least we're off for the next couple nights, as far as I know. Can you think of anything else before we go?
We actually, I actually have something to tell you you didn't know. I'm hoping you'll join me on this show because I have a show that Michael Hall and I are going to do, and I was hoping that you would join us. It's going to be next week, and it will be, I believe, on a Wednesday, and we're going to go over questions that Michael W. Hall, also known as a paranormal lawyer, asked me to ask on his behalf of Commander Willard Miller, which he has never heard the answers to, just so you know.
Okay.
And that topic is interesting, just so our listeners know what I'm talking about. This is related to what is anecdotally called the Wilson Davis leak, also known as the Doc of the Century. And it was named that, I believe, by Grant Cameron and also Michael W. Hall. And you know what that... anyway, I'll just say this. Frank and I researched that topic to death. We interviewed quite a few people, probably more than any other people I know of, or at least some of the most folks that have been interviewed regarding that topic. And some of the conclusions I came to was, like yourself, that document, which I use in quotes, is not authentic as it stands. So I'll go ahead and go over that. And what's going to be interesting is Michael Hall completely disagrees with me on this topic, but we still love to go over it because we're good friends. So we're going to go over that next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
All right, so we'll be looking forward to that. Okay, so thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. We got this one in under 45 minutes, and thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with more great shows as soon as we get around to it. Say goodnight, Chant.